Okay, Be'ezras Hashem, we jump back into a new week, trying our best to start again, Sunday morning, brand new week, fresh, and the ability to really tap into a spirit of renewal, and we jump back in with the focus and the portal of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, of the teachings of this tzaddik that was sent for our time to get us ready for Mashiach, and to get us to start thinking in free ways, in redeemed ways, Be'ezras Hashem. And we jump into our learning with Kesser Shem Tov Tzadi Daled 94, and it begins with the following: Baal Shem Tov b'Shem HaRamban Zuchron Bracha. He brings from the Baal Shem Tov in the name of the Ramban, a Rishon Sha'amar Levanai, who told his son in a letter, Sheyeda ba'atzmoi she'im be'iska b'Torah oisek bal lishma, that his son will be able to detect and will be able to discern whether or not he's studying Torah Lishma. The way to know this is if he's filled with love and with awe, if he's filled with emotional feelings, if he's filled with a feeling of actual connection, then that will be the sign as to whether that engagement with learning is rising up before our Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's a surefire way to know. And over here you see a little bit the connotation is that Lishma means for the sake of connection, which is how the Baal Shem Tov famously and all the the Talmidim and the Talmidim of the Baal Shem understood Lishma to mean L'Shem Dveikus, right? L'Shem Hey, right? For the purpose of fortifying a genuine and conscious relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Unlike the other interpretations of Lishma, of which there are many, right? But predominantly the non-Hasidic approach generally was L'Shem HaTorah, right? Meaning it was a little bit more about Sur Meirah, to stay away from ulterior motives, to stay away from a person who's just doing it, as a business, or doing it for kavod, or doing it for other reasons, right? So as long as it's not that, and as long as it's actually for the Torah, so that was called Lishma. But by the Baal Shem Tov, Lishma was for the purpose of relationship. It was for the purpose of actually feeling Hashem in our lives. And you see, this is what the Ramban was implying to his son, that the way to know whether our learning is lishma is it with Hashem? Are we thinking about Hashem? Are we learning it with Hashem, like we've said now millions of times? Probably not millions of times, that's an exaggeration, but many times we've said from the Baal Shem Tov that you cannot compare a person who learns Torah 100 times to a person who learns Torah 100 times and one. And the Baal Shem Tov interprets 100 times and one, mea pa'amim ve'echad, is to learn that same Torah the same 100 times, but you can't compare when you learn it without the echad and with the echad yachad miyuchad 100 times im ha'echad, with Hashem. So this is a surefire way to know whether a person's Torah's lishma is Hashem present in that. Do we feel love? Do we feel the sense of trepidation and awe and gravity for this, that we're sitting and learning the word of Hashem? Do we feel that? Why is it that Chazal tell us that a person who learns Torah Lishma is zoche, merits dvarim harbe, many things? Well, what's the depth of the many things that a person merits when they learn Torah in this way, Lishma? And what does it actually mean on a deeper level? So he brings, whoever he's quoting this from, probably the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, the primary disciple of the Baal Shem Tov, and the first progenitor of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings. He says he brings in the name of his Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, Ki kol ma'aseh bereishis hein davar katan aygadol nivra al yidei oisiyos barala sha'arim kanoida. Every single thing in creation, every single particle of the physical world, and whatever formulation those particles gather themselves into, whatever form, domim, tzomea, chai, medaber, eish, ruach, mayim, afar, anything that we experience in this world is composed of Hebrew letters that are all vessels for different spiritual energies as they combine in what's called the 231 gates, Rala Sha'arim, which basically in Sefer Yetzirah, if you take all the 22 letters and you draw a line from each of the letters to all of the other letters, there are going to be 231 connections between all the different letters. And these are called the Serufim, the permutations with which great tzaddikim who knew how to meditate on these energies. It's like mixing, ingredients for a cake, where they were able to combine this letter with that letter and this energy with that energy and actually bring them into being. So we know the Gemara tells us, who was it? Bara Gavra? Was it Rava or Rabba? One of the tzaddikim created a person, right? Using, Rashi tells us, Sefer Yetzirah, the actual capacity to create something new, just like a Kadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyachol brought the whole entire world into existence using these 231 gates, the Rala Sha'arim. So when a person is deviating and a person is not living in alignment with their true self, what's happening is that a person is literally not only falling in themselves and experiencing a yerida, but whatever physical object or entity we're engaging with in the context of quote-unquote sin, is we're dragging that down. If a person eats without a bracha, it's doing violence to the food. It's cruel. It's doing violence to the food. Because we don't respect what food is. The food is holy energy, and that food wants to be respected. It wants to be elevated. And instead of a person engages with it in an improper way, that's cruel. Because Moirid Neshamis Kadosh Shema Oisias HaKadosh Mimakayim Chiyusa Mimakayim HaKlipas Chas v'Shalom. Because it's up to us how we want to live in this world. And the world objectively is really defined by how we approach it subjectively. We've spoken about this many times. Gilui Shechina is not an objective reality. The Shechina is already revealed. The question is, do we recognize it? To the extent that we recognize it, the Shechina is revealed. And that has its natural implication in human life, both in our own individual lives and in society. Imagine if the whole entire world lived with consciousness of the Shechina, mamish, the whole world would be paradise. Everyone would treat each other properly. Everyone would have the proper she'ifas, the proper goals, what we could accomplish. This would be paradise. The Shekhinah is there. The question is, are we aware of it? If we're not aware of it, that's called Galus HaShekhinah. The Shekhinah is exiled. And so the same is true for the food that we eat and the different experiences that we engage with. If we experience things properly, everything gets elevated. If we experience things improperly, we not only debase and degrade ourselves, we debase and degrade all the various elements of physicality that are involved in that deviant experience, the experience of deviation. Whether it's with regard to inanimate objects, like I expressed, food, or where a person walks, or whatever element is involved, or whether it's involving an animal, or whatever it is, it brings that thing down. But when a person rectifies his ways, lishma, and begins to connect to the word of Hashem in the Torah, lishma, for the purpose of a relationship with Hashem, like we just learned. Hainu, lishma shel ha'ois. And here the Baal Shem adds another layer, where a person who's learning Torah lishma, what they're doing is, they are rectifying the letters, hahu, that they degraded otherwise. Now, when a person learns Torah with their emotions activated, with tremendous awe, and tremendous love, when a person learns Torah in such a way where they recognize and they're cognizant that every single letter that they encounter in whatever sefer, which all goes back to the Torah Shabbat, without which we have nothing, right? Everything that we learn is all rooted in that. And we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with the Torah, right? With the letters of the Torah. That if a person has in mind when they learn Torah properly, that they're trying to reopen the channels that they themselves closed, where they're trying to elevate all the letters that were in all the different things that they might have engaged with improperly, and now by bringing it back up to its root in the Torah, you can elevate that letter. That's called lishma. That's what lishma means. That this neshama that was otherwise debased and degraded and dragged down is able to rise from the place of the klipos, which means the shells, which means the concealment. And now Hashem's presence is able to shine because we're connecting all of these letters back to their root in the Torah. That's part of the consciousness that we're supposed to have in the Kavanah when we sit and when we learn, which is what we're doing now. And so we can have that in mind. These letters that we're learning here are rooted in letters that are rooted in letters that are rooted in letters that are the source of all of creation. When we learn these letters, we're opening up all the gates that we might have closed, and in so doing, we're rectifying all of the neshamas that were connected to the different aspects of physicality that in our journey we may have degraded along the way. There are myriad, thousands of layers and levels from where the neshamos, which are the letters that were otherwise degraded in the place of the klipos, to the source. There's thousands and thousands of spiritual levels. And a person has to have that in mind, where they're constantly, each time they sit to learn, They have in mind, now you're rectifying another madrega. You're bringing it up another level. All of the things that we've engaged with, the food that we ate without the holiest kavanah, everything that a person engages with improperly, by learning with this consciousness, particularly, things are fixed. Things are rectified bit by bit. Im kain, therefore, shaper amaratana. That's what the Tana means to say. That a person who learns Torah Lishmah, zoicha ledvarim harbe, merits many things. What does this mean, many things, on a deeper level? See, he says the word zocha could mean to merit, but it could also mean, like we come by Chanukah, we say, shemen zayis zach. What does zach mean? Pure, refined. So zocha could mean to merit, but it could also mean not what he gets, but what he's actually doing. Zocha, he refines ledvarim harbe, the many words, the many, many letters that are scattered throughout his experience that he may have interacted and engaged with improperly and inappropriately in the past. Zocha ledvarim harbe. He rectifies and purifies and refines all of those letters. Ki dvarim nasa mizeh ois, because all the things that he's thinking in his past that he stumbled on or struggled with, they all were emergent from the letters that he's learning. Kula mala l'sharsha, and he lifts everything back up to its source. Al kein nikra ahuv, and he is called beloved. Ohev es hamakom. This is a person who is in love with the divine. This is a person who lives life in conscious engagement with Hashem, where we literally are working with Hashem. It's like, you like sometimes a person can have a friendship, which is not like super, super close. It's like more of an acquaintance. And then you get into the same business as the guy, and now you're talking to him every other day because you really have something to talk to him about. And now there's a real relationship because, and they become like, slowly but surely until it's your business partner and he's pinned to the top of your WhatsApp and you're talking to him the whole time, Hashem needs to become our business partner. We have to recognize that how we define our life, who we are and what business we're in is this partnership, this shutfus with Hashem. Person has to conceive of their life in that way, and it begins with self-respect, which begins with the realization that we are a soul that is itself a chelek elokah mimal. We have to recognize that Hashem put us in the world because He believes that we can do something. We're very powerful. We're extraordinarily powerful. The whole energy of the Satan and the Yetzer Hara is to convince us that we're weak and that we can't accomplish, and that who do we think we are, and all of this is the voice of the Satan. We are very powerful. Very. All of us, bar none. Every single human being, certainly every Jew who has a particularized mission in the world, but all of us, we're here to be megala kvod shamayim. And we have to be in constant contact with God. I mean, this is not, you can't do it alone. Hashem is mamish pinned to the top of our WhatsApp.
So it would be a sort of thought process, a sort of meditation before one sits down to learn, which will...
I think that a person, to say it more succinctly, a person should focus on the fact that the Torah that I'm learning is composed of letters. These letters are the spiritual root for everything in the physical world. There are things I've engaged with in the past where I sort of closed off these channels, right? Or I took these letters and cast them down into the mud, and I'm intending now to rectify them. Just think of these words, Zocha ledvarim harbe. I'm refining the whole entire world, but the only way to do that is by being in touch consciously with Hashem on an emotional level, to have an actual relationship where there's a dialogue, where we speak to Him, we hear Him speaking back in the form of the tzaddikim and in the form of all the messages that we get throughout life. He's real. He has to be real. And we have to understand what it means to be a Jew. It means to be on a mission. It means to be a soldier. That there's no other definition for it. Mamish, to be a soldier. See, he says this is called an ohev es hamakom. This is a person who loves God. This is a person who's sort of working with Hashem. Because v'chi yesh lecha ohev gadol, is there any greater, more beloved person to the king? Or is there any greater expression of love? Shemala ben melech she'i kama shanim b'shavi lemelech? Than a person who loves the king so much that he endeavors as much as he can to lift the prince who's been in captivity for so many decades, and to do everything that he can to bring that prince back to Hashem. The implication here in context, the nimshal, is that the whole world is a prince. Unbelievable. Every single food, every bagel, every cup of coffee is a prince. This is unbelievable. This is a ben melech. So this is very radical, because usually we think about ourselves. We're called banim lamakim, kol bnei Yisrael bnei malachim, kol Yisrael bnei malachim. And then maybe that umas ha'olam are all humans are created in the Tselem Elokim. So in some sense, they're also the children of God. He says, no, forget that. Every single particle of the physical world is a prince that's in captivity. And it's up to us to engage with things consciously, and in so doing, we return the prince to Hashem. And that's called an ohev hamakom. That's a person who loves Hashem, who's here mamish on a mission to do this and this alone, and to think about Hashem the whole day. It's not a high madrega. It's really required. It's in the beginning of Shulchan Aruch. Shivisi Hashem l'nagdi samid. There's no other way. This is what it means to be a Jew. And then there are thousands and millions of other halachos, the whole Shulchan Aruch, all for the purpose of giving us touchstones, giving us the ability, every single place that we travel through life, to come into contact with Hashem bit by bit by bit, famously tying our shoes in the morning, washing our hands, everything that we do, davening, business, the way we speak, the way we, etc., etc. So it's all this, but it's all to bring us back to Shivisi Hashem L'negdi Samid, and that's called an Ohev Hamakom. That's Kesser Shem Tov Tzadi Daled. Let's move forward into Kesser Shem Tov Tzadi Vav. And this is a short one, and this is an idea also we've learned many times in different contexts, but it's helpful, I think, sometimes to see the root, because it all goes back to the Baal Shem, like stuff you find in other Sfarim. Most of the time, they've developed them and sort of seen other angles, but the root is already in the Baal Shem Tov. And this is a very, very famous teaching. It's based on a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which some of the Chevra would have learned in Likutei Moharan Torah Hey, where the tzaddik says, Schar mitzvah. The Mishnah Pirkei Avos says the reward for a mitzvah, ostensibly, at least on a pshat level, is another mitzvah, right? So because mitzvah goes mitzvah, so you'll do one mitzvah, and in reward you'll get another mitzvah. Now, ostensibly, again, the schar is that in Olam Haba we're going to get schar for the mitzvah. So how wonderful that if I did one mitzvah, Hashem will give me another mitzvah to do, and then I'll get even more schar, and then I'll get even, and so on. But the Baal Shem Tov understood this very differently. She'ein lecha schar gadol mima sheyesh lo tainug mi mitzvah atzma ba'asoisa b'simcha. There's no greater schar, there's no greater reward to a person who's serving Hashem consciously than the enjoyment of the mitzvah itself. Not schar olam haba, and not even the schar of a mitzvah that's goreres another mitzvah. Schar mitzvah, this is how they interpreted it, is the mitzvah itself. And mitzvah, of course, we know, is a lashon in Aramaic of connection, savsa, right? So mitzvah is not commandment, that's another redefinition, right? Mitzvah is not like a commandment. Mitzvah is an opportunity to connect. That's what a mitzvah is. All right, I was just teaching my son the other day. How much he understood or listened, remains to be seen. But we were learning together about, Asher kedishanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu, which is very important for him to understand what this means, because he's going to say this multiple times a day, and kids are just rattling this off. They might not even know the translation of it. Well, what is it actually? What is it? Asher kedishanu b'mitzvos. So we went through the simple understanding, right? Is who sanctifies us with his mitzvahs. When a person does a mitzvah, they become more refined, they become holier. But I was trying to explain to him that the word kiddushin is meaning to become sanctified, but it also connotes marriage, right? Kiddushin, a masader kiddushin. So we can learn it asher kiddishanu b'mitzvosav, who is betrothing us, who's marrying us with his mitzvahs, like a mother and a father. And maybe that's why the Rosh Tevis, which I showed him also, of Asher of Baruch Ata Hashem is Rosh Tevis Avi, Elokeinu Melech HaOlam is Rosh Tevis Ima, Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvaysa, who's trying to marry us with his mitzvahs, just like a mother and a father. Unbelievable. It's a whole different thing. That's what a mitzvah is. No pressure. It's like, I'm not, like I tell them all the time, it's not me. We're bound by the same thing. I'm not telling you what to do, but what an opportunity that Hashem is trying to marry us. What a privilege. What an easy thing. A little negovasser, a little washing your hands before eating bread. Take a second to make a bracha. Like, that's why we're in this world. And then you win, because kids want to be heroes and winners. This is the main winning. There's nothing to talk about. This is Ezu Gibra Kovish Yitzray. This is why we're alive. This is not, now that we're alive, this is a side thing. This is why we're here in the first place. There's nothing else. Nothing else matters as much as this. This is why there's a world. This is why we're alive. Asher kidishanu b'mitzvosa. So there's no greater mitzvah, there's no greater tainug or simcha than the mitzvah itself, which is the connection itself. Even if a person was told that they're not going to get any reward in the next world, it would be enough. Die. They're already good. And there's going to be plenty schar in tachlis al mitzvah, primarily when a person performs the mitzvahs with joy and with dvekas and with connection, which is why the mitzvahs were given. There will be so much schar we can't even imagine, but that's not the point. That's not the point. To the extent that we serve Hashem for the schar, that's going to detract. That's going to detract from the actual experience of what mitzvahs are supposed to be, and that will probably lessen the schar that we know. So it's like this funny thing. The more you run away from it, the more you'll get it. But it's not what it's about. It's about the connection. It's about the relationship. Relationship first, always, always. It's about the relationship, and that's Kesser Shem Tov Tzadi Vav. Let's move forward into the final teaching, which is so crucial for today. All of these are, but this is mamish. This is unbelievable crucial. Yeah.
Tzadik Dalet is Tzivos Hashem. It's all about connecting the army to release the prisoner. Tzadik Vav is all about Tzav.
Beautiful. Okay, let's see if you can find something for Tzadi Ches as well. Let's see. So says the Heilige Baal Shem Tov Schus Yagan. The pasuk in Mishlei says, "Es asher yav yochiach." The person that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves, yochiach. Hashem is sometimes giving chastisement, musar, to the person who He loves. And on a simple level, if you look at the Mefarshim, it's clear, because if a person didn't believe in someone, so there's no point. You just there would be no relationship where you're trying to help the person grow or refine. It's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us that He cares enough about us. He believes in us enough, right? That He should be sending us messages in our lives to get us to live in the proper way. So says the Baal Shem Tov, we can also understand this pasuk from the standpoint of Bein Adam L'Chaveiro, even though it really means Bein Adam L'Makom. Es asher yav Hashem yochiach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives musar to those who He loves. But the Baal Shem Tov says the same is true about interpersonal relationships. In order to be able to give musar, it has to be out of love. But people who have as a job, you speak about lishma, people who have as a career, their career meichichim, that's how it used to be. People went from town to town, they were called magidim, and this was their job. People paid them money, some people it's like a form of enjoyment. It's like some strange twisted thing, but people would pay them money to get to yell at them. That's essentially what they would do. They would stand up and just yell. Chas v'shalom. Al yedei zeh oilei hanas mimama, or to do this as a career, she'ena l'shem shemayim, but this is not really because they really feel it and live it and want it. And they do a lot of crying and they do a lot of guilting and a lot of shaming. Kamaisha Kasov, he says a facetious Torah on a pasuk in Tehillim, Haisoli dimasi lechem kol hayom. David HaMelech says, my tears were my bread the whole day, which means I was just eating my tears the whole time. My tears, I was sustained by my tears. See, he says there are people who dimasi lechem. Their sustenance, their parnasa is dimasi, is to make people cry, right? And is to cry and whatever and speak about how terrible everyone is, and that's their parnasa. That's dimasi lechem. That's not how it's supposed to be. He says, I heard from the Baal Shem Tov, he says, I want to let you know this kind of thing causes strife and discord between Hashem and Klal Yisrael. This is not helping anyone. This is not helping Hashem. This is not helping the nation. Kamada Atamar, as the pasuk says, Vayishalach Hashem ba'am es hanachashim asrafim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent against the nation poisonous snakes. He says this is what it's talking about. These are poisonous snakes. And I hate to break the news, but these could be Rashi Yeshiva, these could be Mashgichim, these could be Rabbanim. Poisonous snakes. Poisonous snakes. This is not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. She'im beis mine moichichim, because the Baal Shem Tov says there are two kinds of moichichim. Listen carefully to this. And it's related to what we just learned. The whole thing is, it's all one thing. The Baal Shem Tov's light is one light. It just gets reflected in millions of, but it's the light of relationship. Everything is seen through that lens. And then it has millions of implications, and that's all the teachings that we learn. But if you want to know the one, the Baal Shem Tov came to the world, one thing is really, that's why they're called chasidim, chesed, love, b'dechilu urechimu. That's what the Baal Shem Tov came to bring to our nation in the last generations before Mashiach. So listen to this. He says a mashal. Sheshalach hamelech b'no yichidoi me'al panav. There was a son of a king, the prince who was sent away, his only son, who the king, for whatever reason, sent far away. V'shilach es beis avada. And then, after some time, he sent 2 of his servants after him to go and see what was going on. V'chazar echad v'hilshen es haben. One of the avadim came back, and they maligned the son. V'hilshen, they said, lashon hara. Apropos for, just the parshas that we had, just lashon hara. El aviv, to the dad. About all the terrible things that his son was doing, and how unprincely he was, and how debased he had become, and etc., and who he was hanging out with, and the things he was doing, etc., all of which were true, by the way. But this is what he said. He came back and he reported these facts. Your son is a lowlife, essentially. V'hasheni, but the second Eved, Amar kedvar ma'ele, he reported these things because this was a fact. These things were true. Rak shediber, but the way and the context that he gave to what was going on with the prince is mitzad shayatzar b'tzar hamelech u'benoi, was because he felt the pain of the king and he felt the pain of the prince. Shenishlach me'al panav, because what should the prince do? He was cast away from the father's man rav, such a long time. He forgot he was a prince. He forgot who he was. Look at what he goes through. Look at the pain. Look at the difficulties that klal Yisrael have. Look at the tsaras that Jews are experiencing. Look at how difficult it is. And this is how he presented. He contextualized the fact with a narrative. With a narrative. Presenting the broader picture. And all of his honor, his ilua, has become cheapened. So when the king heard this, instead of the king feeling anger, because that's not the appropriate emotion when you're dealing with a person who's ill, and the person who's sick, or the person who's in pain, the king responds with compassion. And this is how we want our HaKadosh Baruch Hu to respond to us, because this is the deepest truth for all of us. That's why I said yesterday in this year, there are no risha'im, or wicked people. There are people who suffer. There are people who, for one reason or another, go through things. I speak to a lot of risha'im. I promise you, quote unquote, the people who don't know this would call them right away. Well, these are terrible risha'im, the averos they're doing and the things they're stuck in. These are not risha'im. These are the best, holiest souls we have, and they're hurting. They're hurting. For one reason or another, they're hurting. For one reason or another, they were never introduced to their holiness. For one reason or another, they never had a chance in the first place. So what, I should go back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and report that his nation is a bunch of sinners? Chas v'shalom. What we do is we come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, have Rahmanas on your nation. These are good people. These are holy people. They just forgot. This world is such a difficult world. There are so many difficult challenges that people experience. Have compassion. For people who are ill in a hospital, we don't get angry at them. We feel compassionate toward them. And there's no difference between a physical illness and a spiritual illness, an emotional illness. There's only room for compassion. There's not room for anger. And that is the result of one of two drachim, one of two pathways as it relates to leadership and people who are guiding klal Yisrael. What is the message that we're delivering to them? What's the message that we're bringing back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when we daven to Hashem for those who are in our charge? But he says, Kach yesh moichiach b'shar shemedaber b'gnus Yisrael. There's some moichiach, when he speaks b'gnus Yisrael, about the degenerate nature of the nation. And he says when he does that, he thinks maybe he's doing somebody a favor. He thinks because he's really putting them in their place, or he's really coming back to Hashem and saying, he says what a person is doing when they do that, they're awakening the kitrug, the accusation of the primordial snake, the nachash hakadmaini. And that's what the pasuk means. Vayishalach Hashem ba'am as hanachashim. This is what it means. Hashem has afflicted his nation with these snakes. Shesarfim be'eresh bepiyam. There is a poison in their mouth. Ube'emesh shetzarich lichlal atzmi imayim. And he says, you know what it means to be a mochiach? That mochiach needs to include himself with those who he's giving tochacha to. He needs to see himself as part and parcel of that struggle. That's the only kind of leader who's going to be effective, is a person who's in it themselves. A person that people can get the sense they understand what struggle is. They're humans too. That's the kind of leadership that we need. I gave a shiur in Chicago a few weeks ago just on this topic. 2 weeks ago with regard to Shemini. I'll just say very, very brief and then we'll finish. The Sfas Emes says the most remarkable thing, that Aaron didn't want to approach to bring the karbanas for the inauguration of the Mishkan of the Yom HaShmini. Why? Because he was involved in the Chet HaEgel. Remember? And Moshe Rabbeinu told Aaron, come close to the Mizbeach, krav al Mizbeach. Why? Rashi says, Lama ata boish. Moshe Rabbeinu told Aaron, why are you ashamed? Lekach nevcharta. You were chosen for this. You were chosen for this. Says the Sfas Emes. What was the whole thing in the Mishkan? The whole thing in the Mishkan was tshuva for the Chet HaEgel. Because by Yom HaShmini, says the Sfas Emes, 7 is the realm of nature, that's the realm of sin, that's the realm of separateness, that's the realm of concealment. 8 is the world of Bina. 8 is the world of the Kisei HaKavod. 8 is the spiritual womb, that's where everything is one, that's where everything comes from. That's where we return in tshuva. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave klal Yisrael the commandment to build the Mishkan as an atonement for the Chet HaEgel, and therefore, on the 8th day, the Mishkan is inaugurated because it channels the energy of the 8. Says Moshe Rabbeinu to Aaron, you think that you can't be the leader of this tshuva process because you were involved in the Chet? Says Moshe Rabbeinu, who else? Who else should lead the tshuva process? Who else could lead these people if not someone who can relate to them and they can relate to? He says, Lama ata boish. So why are you ashamed? Lakach nivcharta. This is what, not just, even though you were involved, no, you could still do. No, this is why you were chosen. And even more than that, says the Sfas Emes, if I didn't see it inside it, you have to see it. He says, that's why Hashem caused you to do the sin, is because you're supposed to be a leader. Because you're supposed to be a person who can relate to others. And maybe that's the case for every single member of the Jewish nation. Maybe all of us are compelled into lower behaviors so that we have a safa, we can understand, and we can relate to people, we can feel compassionate toward them. But that's how a person is supposed to give hochacha, by including themselves in it. That's why I try to be very careful, not to say, I don't like just try to say you, when we're speaking, that you got to do this, and you have to, I say we, me, because it's really not even we, because it's really me, because it's us, because it's not hierarchical, it's all of us, we're all on this journey together, and that's the energy we need today. That's called guidance. It has to be with love, it has to be with collectivity. See, he says, really, hocheach and then tochiach. Hocheach la'atzmecha kishe tochiach es amisecha, and then loisisa lav chet. Then we won't carry the iniquity of giving musar improperly, where a person always has to include themselves with it, and to say, I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking to us, but to mean it. And to really be a person who recognizes we're just humans. No matter what position we have, no matter how long is our frock and our beard, we're humans. We're all human beings. We all have our stuff. We all struggle the same. We're all the same. We're not angels. None of us are. Right? And so what a privilege to be able to stand up, bechlal humans, and to just speak humbly and to say, let's do this thing together. Let's figure out the way. I don't know the way. I'm trying to find it. Baruch Hashem, I've discovered some teachings that work for me. And they work to the extent that they work, and there's so much more that I have to do. So let's learn them and let's grow together. That's really the idea. What a powerful teaching from the Baal Shem Tov when we try to relate to other Jews who might be struggling in whatever area that maybe we ourselves are not struggling with, but to have rachmanas. And by speaking to them in this way, and by bringing their pain to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this way, we're ma'orer, we awaken, chas v'shalom, not kas, not anger, but the most incredible rachmanas from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Be'ezras Hashem, this should all be included in that which was stated prophetically by the Zohar HaKadosh thousands of years ago, that the Sifra Da, with this Sefer, Zohar HaKadosh, and all of the associated texts that came throughout history, all based on that revelation, Yivkan Be Megalusa, with this Sefer, with these teachings, and with this consciousness that isn't optional, this is what we need today, Yivkan Be Megalusa, we will get out of exile, both personal and collective, Berachame, with Rachmanas. Hashem should bless us with a week full of compassion, full of depth, full of connection, full of authenticity, and full of connection to Hashem. Thank you so much for coming, for joining, for making the minyan, and Shrenu. Tzadiches?
Tzadiches.
Tzach.
Huh?
Or tzach u'mitzuch tzach means
Okay.
light.
I was thinking the other way.
Yeah.
Chaitz. It's
An arrow.
So the snake throws in the mouth.
Like poison.
It's an arrow, the poison. So
Just send holy good arrows.
really
Good
the
arrows.
opposite, that's
You know,
what
you know,
Tzaddik and Chassidim.
Mamish, you know Avram Avinu's arrows, you know what they came from? His holy, Avram is chesed. His arrows came from dust. Because if you throw dust, which is humility, so that will turn into holy arrows of kindness. That's Avram Avinu's arrows. Chetz, tzach. Huh? What's that? Choni Amago, sure. Same, I'm not sure if it was a Choni? Yeah? Yeah, he stayed over in the hotel and the whole thing, and they that wasn't Choni. Nachum Gamzu, yeah.
שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני